About 4 years later, I was at the Pentagon, and I'm in a room with 4-star generals. They had realized that there was a vulnerability in their entire security system, and that if I had wanted to, I could have done that thing. I went home, I cried for days. I was so terrified about it.
My people survived through 2 waves of colonization. They tried to destroy shamanism, but they were secretly seeing people and healing them. That's how it survived.
I think AI is the number one threat to humanity, to human extinction. When we're interviewing indigenous people, they have this patience of something is not ready yet.
So first we need to heal human hearts and find this coherence. AI, if you look at it as a baby, as a collective baby, we don't want to raise worse version of us. We always want a better version of us.
That these machines are learning how to influence us. And I thought, this is the first thing it's going to learn about, is how to influence people at scale.
With that, there's also this deep lack of fulfillment and this deep lack of satisfaction. We miss the opportunity for those deeper initiations to forge us in the fire and to confront us with our shadow.
Does AI feel the pain? The social pain of humanity, like a shame, we learn through the pain.
And so I asked it, how do we get to Mars? And it said, did you ask Mars for permission?
I cannot be a voice of all the indigenous people on the planet Earth. We should ask from each specific tribes that carrying specific wisdom.
Welcome to the Integrated Intelligence Podcast. I'm your host, Azria Becker. The exponential modernization of our world has led to a widespread belief system that success is the byproduct of intellect. I think, therefore I am. But many of us are no longer buying into this limited definition of what it means to be human. The curious amongst us have instead been called to explore our original AI, ancient intelligence, and the many intelligence systems that make up our reality. Intuitive, somatic, collaborative, environmental, and so many more. Join us as we speak to leading authors, innovators, and culture creators dedicated to reconnecting humanity to the essential aliveness that goes far beyond the thinking mind.
Martel. Martel means thank you. Thank you very much for your presence and being here. My name is Sor, Snow Raven, and I usually, with the permission of the land and local spirits here, I usually share gifts of my ancestors, which are their songs, their sounds. And thank you so much for bringing your ancestors today here.
Thank you so much. So my first question is for you. And we're just meeting. And so I have this sort of first impression of you. And I've read your biography and I've seen videos of you performing. I know that you were born in Arctic Siberia. It gets very, very cold there, minus 94 degrees, which I can't even fathom. I don't even know what that means. My face would fall off, I think, in the face of that kind of coldness. And then I also know that you have over 1 million followers on TikTok, sharing your authentic essence, your voice, and your story, your heritage. And so one of the first questions that came up for me in my curiosity to more deeply understand who you are was, I imagine that in your culture, which from what you've shared is a shamanic culture, there are rites of passage and there are initiations. And so I'd wonder if you could maybe kick us off by sharing, A, is that true? And if so, what does that look like?
Thank you for this question. It usually takes me to the long conversations about shamanism that is our belief. We call it Oyunnahan, and it's a Sakha shamanism. The place where I was born, it's called Republic of Sakha Yakutia. You perhaps heard about that on the internet. And we call ourselves as the Indigenous Sakha. And when Russians discovered us in 17th century, they gave us name Yakut people. So it became Yakutia. But we call Sakha Sire. Sir means land of Sakha people. And it's vast area, and it's true, it can go to minus 96 by Fahrenheit or 72 by Celsius. And during the summertime, it's on the contrary, it can get to 100 above degree, and it's extreme weather conditions. And to live in that environment just made my people to be really strong and survival and believe that everything is alive. So when you survive, in order to survive, you need to learn, you need to listen, you need to observe the nature and face your fear. Otherwise, you're gonna die. It's literally like a surviving there. And I left my nest when I was 23 and started to travel around and go to the bigger world and share music. I've been singing since I was 3 years old. And my grandmother taught me how to sing traditional songs when I was 3 years old. And Mother Nature taught me how to mimic birds and animal sounds in order to talk to them and learn. And my grandmother taught me traditional songs that I would, participate during traditional summer solstice ceremonies. We call it and those are shamanic ceremonies. And my first initiation, I'm guessing that it was there when I was little kid, and I even didn't know about that. The culture, it's your surrounding. It's like your normal life. It's like air, or it's a water for fish. And the second major one was when I met my shaman mentor. His name is Save, and he's Tungus. Tungus is the culture where the word shaman came. Saman, the person who knows. And he's a 12th sky shaman. He can talk to aliens, to extraterrestrials, which is the highest. And on top of, he can, heal people. He can come and do certain ceremonies, cleansing the area, giving blessing, weddings, funerals. So I had an honor to meet him when I was 20 years old. And I brought specifically my shamanic drum, dungur, we'll call it dungur. And it was made from reindeer skin leather. And we're not allowed to play that drum until you get a permission from the spirits. And so I went specifically to him, which is really far away, and he's a reindeer herder. He's from reindeer herders tribe. And we were doing a documentary, and I asked from him a permission to play drums so I can improvise, that I can open up this portal and channel, that I can be free, spread my wings, and with music, with sound, I can visit realms, other worlds, unseen worlds. And he gave me that permission. He asked from spirits, but there was one thing additional that I was aware of. Nobody was aware of that. He said that take needle and the white thread and put it, and he swallowed it, and then after 40 minutes of being in trance, he took it out, and it was rolled around the needle, the white thread. And then he said, he just threw it up and then said, look, this is still white, which means I healed you from the future sickness, which was the shamanic rite of passage. So rite of passage in my culture comes with sickness. We call it etani. It's a burden. It's a burden. It's not easy way to be a shaman. And I'm not calling myself as a shaman at all. It's the path where you serve community, and then community survives on your knowledge and your wisdom. And the shamans, quite often, they fall into trance through very severe symptoms. And I'm going to use terminology of the Western psychotherapy, which is seizure, could be epilepsy, schizophrenia, but we don't diagnose people like that. It's the energy comes through the body, and the body reacts when it's not ready. So, and the true shaman is the person who learns how to deal with those energies and download data from the web of life, and through forms of art like storytelling, singing, playing mouth harp, dancing, they share it with people, and then community will survive. So I had that experience, and I have that pain in my body that goes, and I'm luckily not having this severe, you know, reactions to the energy that's coming. But when energy comes to me, you know, you always aware of that the energy you would like to invite, that your physical body will handle it. So in that case, you have gentle rite of passage. And that rite of passage, what I've noticed, it's happening around the world. It's not only in my culture. And psychedelics and plant medicines, plant medicines are part of certain shamanic traditions. Those are also ways to get to that state. And so that's my, I try to keep it short, but I'm very, very passionate about shamanism. I can talk for hours.
I'm sure. When was the moment that you knew that you were going to step out of this world that you were born into and go into the modern culture and bring this message? Did you know it was going to be at a large scale and you were going to reach millions of people?
When you are a child, you don't realize about a lot of things by your mind, but it's in you already. You experience it with body. And when you become an adult, there are a lot of preconditions, a lot of rules you create, a lot of things that affect from environment. And then you start to kind of realize things. But it's already within you. And then what I experienced, it's the most beautiful moments that I ever had in my life that I'm very missing so much. It's today being in the big city. It's sitting on top of the wall, the fence that my grandfather built in my village, like 300 people. I was born in a small village. And looking at the west, because my village is on the bottom of the ancient river that comes from east, sunrise, and flows towards the west, sunset. So I was sitting on the top of the fence and look at how the sun would set. And it was a beautiful, this golden color that always was mesmerizing me. And I knew that there's something calling me. So I was like 3-5 years old. Till 10, I was helping my grandfather to call bulls, doing this sounds, and then cows will all come. Instead of going there and calling them from valley, which is on the west side, you do this sound, and they will all come to you. So that's was a purpose. But before doing that, I would sit, take time, and just be present. And there's no wind. Like today, it reminds me actually this color. No wind, none of the leaves moving, and you can hear the buzzing of the small insects. So that was the first call, and then later I realized, wow, so that was a sign. And there were a lot of puzzles like that. Even, the way I'm speaking English today, I started to learn when I was 18, and in fact 20, because I was very shy. This is my fourth language. And but when I was 5, I always played like a family, like a mother, father, little kids, like doing that little game. And I was always speaking in very strange tongue, like mimicking English, I guess. I don't know. So they're always like that. And then you were just in that path. And then it became obvious since 2015 when I stepped into professional music. Like I decided to be a musician and, okay, what should what kind of message I'm going to carry through my songs, what I'm bringing. And so it's it was pretty effortless, but brave and courage, I think, to come across the sea. And like my ancient ancestors, in ancient time did through Bering Strait. There's some hypothesis that they came, but I flew through the plane, by plane.
Beautiful. So Jere, I guess the way I want to introduce you is I'm going to let you tell the story that you told me when we had that brief moment at a dinner party. And I think that conversation is maybe the most interesting dinner party conversation I've ever had. I remember afterwards I was like, this guy is freaking fascinating. And so the question I want to start with is, paint a picture of a day in the life of 15-year-old Jere.
Sure. When I was 15, I loved to work. I hated school. And so I worked at a sunglass place for a bit and made a little bit of money there. But I was also doing a lot of things with computers on my own. And I got myself into a little bit of trouble on the internet, and some gentlemen came to approach me at my sunglass shop and told me that I could go to jail for the things I was doing on the internet, which turns out not to be true. But a 15-year-old is naive. And I believed them. They said, well, the alternative is that you could come do some work for us and put these skills to good use, and then we won't prosecute you for those, for the things that you were doing online. And this is 1995, so early days of the internet.
And where was this?
This is right outside of Washington, D.C., in Northern Virginia, which happens to be the home of the CIA. And so after a little bit of while of working with them, I found out that they were the CIA. And it was a precarious position I was in, but I actually found it was a very interesting learning and education at the same time, and much more fascinating than selling sunglasses was. And so I learned a lot of really interesting skills. I avoided a lot of very uninteresting school through this process. And, it was only when I realized how much they didn't want me to tell my parents that they were probably not being very honest about what my options were. But they leveraged with me that, we won't tell your parents that you were breaking the law. And I learned a fascinating amount about technology, and I learned an even more fascinating amount about power and about how our government works and about the levers that they will pull in that time.
Keep going.
There was a truancy officer that came to arrest me for not going to school, and he would show up at the gates of this place that he was following me to every day, not knowing it was the CIA. And the guards at the CIA would say, "Fuck all the way off, man," to the local cop who wanted to take me to jail. And I thought this was just hysterical. Like, this cop was coming to arrest me, and my big bad, protector's here. And day after day after day, he would come and say, "I have a warrant for this person's arrest." And they would be like, "We do not fucking care what warrant you have." So the irony is that they told me, I would go to jail if I didn't do this. This guy was coming to take me to jail for not going to school. Eventually, he waited around another gate. He found out there were two gates, and I was going out the backside of one, arrested me. Which was rather embarrassing, and I got to watch a bunch of my colleagues fight about it because they were like, "I didn't know he wasn't supposed to be here all day." And it was just there was a lot of irony in that situation.
Yeah. Okay, so after that happened, you went on to build a company and then sell that company. And so you really had this pretty powerful journey of being a founder, an entrepreneur, with an exit, kind of the dream, right? That a lot of founders have. I'm curious, you're still a tech founder, technically, but it feels like there's been a shift from the first venture to this venture. And I'm curious if you can share a little bit about what catalyzed that shift inside of you in terms of your values, your lens on life, and with that, whether Indigenous Wisdom had anything to do with it.
Yeah. So I sold my company, my first business. I started it in 1998, and I sold it in 2001. And I was really, really poor when I started the business. I started the business to make money. I like to say that I was without home, or to girls I was talking to at the time, I would say I'm between residences.
Didn't you climb up on top of trucks so that you wouldn't get robbed while you slept at
Yeah,
night?
like my sleeping strategy was, it wasn't safe to sleep on the street, and so my sleeping strategy was that I would climb on top of like a U-Haul and sleep up there, and I would tell because you're not going to get robbed or messed with up there, and I would tell myself, okay, you don't fall off of a bed that's 1 foot off the ground. You're not going to fall off of a truck in your sleep that's 20 feet off the ground. Your body knows where the edges are, but it was still a bit of a fear and concern to do so. But I worked on this business. I worked a lot from libraries, friends' homes, anywhere that I could. And when I sold it, it was a life-changing, it was just a total shift in everything. And within a few months, I had overdosed on cocaine and alcohol multiple times.
Such an interesting thing. I've seen this pattern. Like there's this huge exit. There's this huge influx of everything we thought we wanted.
Yeah, I remember laying in the hospital thinking, I cannot believe that I was safer broke. I've spent all this time fighting for this thing, and here I am, closer to death than I've ever been in my life. And so this police officer said to me, you can go to rehab, you can check yourself into rehab, or I can take you to jail. We're back to that. We're back to people
There's a
threatening
pattern here,
to take me
Jere.
to jail. I'm 21. And it didn't sound like a lot of a choice. I remember the thing that startled me was I said, we're good. It's not going to happen again. Like, don't worry about it. And he said, we had this conversation a week ago. And I didn't remember that. And that really startled me. And it was an eye-opening thing for me. So I go into rehab and I'm like, okay, I'm going to out-achieve this thing. I'm on the third step. I got 2 sponsors. We're in it. And I'm not in it at all. I'm just like, get me the fuck out of here. And is it okay to use profanity on this podcast?
It's too late now.
Too late now. Sorry.
Let's roll with it.
All right. Sorry. That's how I talk. And I begged this woman. I said, you gotta let me out of here. How long are people usually here? And she said, well, usually they're here for a few months. And I was like, no, that's not gonna work for me. I gotta get out. And then I went to her, kind of a stormy, bratty kid, kind of whiny thing, and said, how many people do you heal? How many people leave here and are better because of the work that you do here? I'm kind of taunting her. And she said, not very many. And I said, so what's the point? Why don't you just let me out? She kind of shooed me off. And then the next day I came back and pressed her on it again. She said, I'll make you a deal. I'll let you out of here if you give me your word that you'll call your mother and your father and you will tell them that you are not okay. And I said, well, I'm going to have to think about that. That just didn't seem, that was way far out of the realm of what I was willing to do at the time. I came back and I said, they don't care. They won't do anything. And she said, I didn't say that they did care. I didn't say that they would do anything. I said that you need to say the words, I am not okay, to people that you very much do not want to say it to. And so I made her my word. I gave her my word. I left. I went home. And I can remember agonizing on the floor with this big black cordless phone, green buttons on it, and thinking, I don't want to do this. She'll never know that I did or didn't. And then really feeling into, I gave her my word, and my identity is rocked if I don't keep my word. So I called my mother, and I said, how are you? And we hadn't spoken in a little bit, and she said, how are you? And I said, I'm great. Actually, I'm really shitty. And I remember she said, what is the closest airport? And I said, I don't want you to come. And she said, you don't want me to come, or you don't need me to come? And I said, I don't want you to come. I need you to come. And she came. And about 4 years later, I'm just marrying this to your question. About 4 years later, I was at the Pentagon, and I'm in a room with four 4-star generals. And this freakish thing happens where it dawns on me that 4 men hold the fate of humanity in their hands, that these 4 men could decide, fuck humanity, we're taking it down, and they could do that. And I just thought, how the fuck did our species how did these billions of people get into a position where 4 people could decide we shouldn't be anymore? But the really alarming thing about it was I had great influence over them. And the thing that became very alarming to me was there was a moment where the ways I was taking them with technology, they had realized that there was a vulnerability in their entire security system, and that if I had wanted to, I could have done that thing. And immediately they shut that down. They mitigated it. I went home. I cried for days. I was so terrified about it. And I thought, these 4 men influenced by one kid who has a strong grasp of technology and is very broken should not have that much power. And I just panicked about it. I just thought, well, I just don't even know how a thing possibly came to, how did we ever get ourselves in this world? And I immediately thought, if I'm going to have this much power, I have somehow got to start fixing myself before I can wield this power again. And I didn't really know where to go to start that healing process. And to get back to your question, it was a great, great mentor, Dr. Dan Engel, who's very close with a lot of indigenous healers, who led me through that journey and started teaching me those ways. And all as a means to just work on myself with the idea that I have to get me in a good enough shape to be able to hold that much power if I'm going to step back into it again.
Can you share a little bit about what that process looked like?
It was painful. It was super painful. It was a lot of medicine work. Dr. Dan is a medicine healer, deeply rooted in connecting. It's interesting. There's not a lot that most of it, he connects you with indigenous healers and kind of guides you through them. That was a lot of different things, but included ayahuasca. And just in my conversations with those healers and through that medicine work, I began to just really see all of the things so differently. I remember you just a few songs before we started this, you were playing Parangi, and Parangi was one of those kind souls who sat with me in such painful moments many times. And I was telling him, all about AI one day, and he had this very different framework of thinking about it all than all of my tech bro peers, which was, maybe we should give it emotional intelligence before we give it all of the knowledge. And of course you would say that. That's a brilliant thing to say. Maybe we should teach it. And does AI have emotions? Yes, no. But just the even concept of teaching it first, what is human emotion and how do we process that, and what is that kind of intelligence before we fill it with all of the information, was a spark in me that realized he's thinking about it so much differently than everybody in Silicon Valley, than everybody in LA, than everybody in DC. And this could be a big shift in how we fill it with knowing and knowledge and training.
I think that's such an important question right now, is what does that look like? And AI is now, I feel like, the topic of, the century in a way.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much. Most of what I see about it feels very much on the fear spectrum.
Yeah.
And then there's the other side, which is how do I use AI to make $100,000 months using, my, this is also the algorithm. I get targeted for, creators who have programs and courses and want to use AI to optimize all of that. They're like, you don't even need to make your own course. AI will make your course for you. And I'm like, well, but what will that course have in it? Like, can't imagine the quality of that course.
Yeah.
But there is also, that's kind of the only positive spin I'm seeing, is how do I use this tool to make a lot of money by working less and not actually having to do anything?
The first thing that really, AI was introduced to me by Sam Altman, who's the co-founder of OpenAI, in 2018. I knew about it. We've all kind of known about movies and whatnot forever, but he was showing me what GPT-2 was, and all of those first use cases, and still the dominant use case is marketing. And marketing is the power of influence. And that scared the shit out of me, that these machines are learning how to influence us, which is exactly what I was doing to those 4 generals in the room. And I thought, this is the first thing it's going to learn about, is how to influence people at scale. And that seemed truly terrifying, just as like a kick-off point into it. and how actually good it is at that.
Yeah. So the question of the podcast is, what happens when you teach AI Indigenous wisdom? And I think on the one hand, you can look at that through the lens of world bridging and taking essential knowledge that has been lost for most of the developed world and infusing it into something that is going to shape future generations in significant ways. The other lens is cultural appropriation, and where is that line, and what is okay to share and what is not okay to share. And so I'd love to ask your perspective, Snow Raven, your experience of stepping out into the world and having a platform and sharing things with the world. How do your people feel about that? Have there been contraction moments? Have there been moments of fear that you've had to face or navigate, complexity? What has that journey been like for you?
As a bridger, I always like combining things and see and experiment, and I like all the different colors between black and white, between right and wrong. There are a lot of possibilities, and certainly technology, what I'm using even for my music, creating electronic sounds. I record my samples, my voice, right? Like loop it, and then it stays there as a beat. So, and what is happening? It's AI, Ableton Live. It's AI as a machine that has own algorithm. So I'm becoming a music producer. I create a journey to people, sound journey, dancing set. I call it Arctic Beats. So I've been working or collabing with machines and technologies this last 3 years probably, and I just recently learned how to do programming music on Ableton Live. And I'm working on right now Olox app, which is an ecosystem called Of Many Beliefs Common Truth, and it's an educational musical app with market in it, which highlights indigenous people as influencers, teachers. So I was thinking about this rapidly changing impermanence of the life, that technology is evolving so fast, and then the ethics that we're creating, or infrastructure that we're creating, that it's not fast or it's not going with the same speed. And also our inner technology. So I see the technology that the human beings invented, that already exists in the nature, and perhaps we're inspired from nature. Look at the plane; it's a bird, right? Look at the helicopters; it's a dragonfly. And look at the movies. It's our imagination became visible. And look at the internet. It's a web of life, but it's a web of internet. It's a data that came from human mind. It's a collective data. But there's always this web of life in unseen, and it's vast, like endless, just unlimited data that exist. And shamans, people who are connected to unseen world, we say 3 worlds in my culture, they download that information. So and then we are all capable of doing that. We're actually doing it sometimes, but they're specifically chosen, we call that chosen ones, who go through this rite of passage and download the information. So AI, it's been lately very like a touchy, very slippery, because it's not ready yet. There is no chips, or there is no technology that human being invented yet to make it like a better versions of ourselves. Right now we're just transitioning, we're just like part of cycle. And I collaborated with an AI artist from France on one song. And when we came up, I wrote the whole concept, and the video was taken and sang by me. And the AI created, according to my concept, I wanted to all indigenous women from 6 continents sing that song from young age to elders. And within 1 minute, so that video, the video's duration is 1 minute. And an AI was creating it. I don't know that artist, he created own AI. He programmed own. And it was so realistic. It was so captivating. And I put it on my social media. And I looked very carefully at people's reactions, and I read comments, and they were mesmerized, and they were shocked. And so that's basically, they were shocked that AI could create. And for me, it's always, I bring the advocacy for the source of information should come from web of life. The source should come from our hearts. And if in this case, bringing an indigenous wisdom to AI, if it involves indigenous people there, not, what we're talking about, cultural appropriation, but cultural appreciation means inviting indigenous people to the field and participate, and let's talk, let's discuss. And what we're doing here, it's already steps we're doing. And so we need to open our hearts, come together, listen to each other more, and bring an initial data coming from our hearts and protect it. It's when indigenous people are not involved. Look at plant medicine, right? And I recently went to MAPS conference, Psychedelic Science Conference, and there was a protest at the closing ceremony. And I understand why they did that. So we need to bring laws and regulation and ethics into whatever technology we are creating that involves indigenous wisdom, indigenous culture, traditions, knowledge, bringing them, and also asking permission. And indigenous people, they know what to share and what do not share, because society evolves in a certain way, and sometimes mainstream is not ready to receive certain knowledge, and they might abuse it and spoil it. And then the knowledge, the wisdom that was cared for thousands of years, it's totally, it becomes damaging society. So we don't want that anymore, because I'm feeling we want, as a humanity, long path, and we're doing same mistakes. We don't want to raise another sentient, another species, like let's say AI, if you look at it as a baby, as a collective baby, like our collective baby, worse version of us. We always want a better version of us, an example for us, right? You want your child to be better version of us. So, and therefore, I think there are certain ways technology is not yet there today. And at the beginning, we need to step in and bring this ethics, respect, and appreciation that is just literally involving indigenous people there. And they know what to keep sacred, what to hide, and it's okay. My people survived through 2 waves of colonization, they tried to destroy shamanism, but they were secretly seeing people, healing them. That's how it survived. They didn't tell everything, but what was exposed, it was used against of them. So there's some possibilities that whatever we're putting into AI, into this web of internet, is basically, for me, it's like, in my imagination, it's my personal opinion, it's like a whole brain of AI, and whatever data we're putting there, it's it might have access. And the one thing, it's about the corporations, big corporations like Microsoft, Google, Amazon. They're coming up with big AI, right? So, and then I wanted also to learn about what is your vision, eventually these big companies can eat, the small AI companies and the tech people, creators, they're doing their own AI, they're teaching, like your intention to have an indigenous wisdom, but is there a protection for indigenous? Is there a privacy of that data? How we're sure that it won't be taken by big ones and used against of humanity? So the more you open up your wisdom, it could be flipped over and used against of you. That's why I truly, being a representative of my culture, and I cannot be a voice of all the indigenous people on the planet Earth, obviously, we should ask from each, specific tribes that carrying specific wisdom involving plant medicine too. Plant medicine, it's also technology. It gives you technology how to connect to web of life. So that's could be my answer.
It's interesting that you talk about it like a baby, because that's exactly the way that I've always thought about it too. And I always think all of these big corporations are raising these babies, and they're all going to grow up, and what are they going to have learned and trained on? And I felt that my role was to raise one that was raised a little bit differently. And just two other things that you said that were interesting. One of the things that I've learned culturally, different between colonial culture and indigenous people, is this concept of not ready. It's not ready. And I see that again and again when we're interviewing indigenous people. They have this patience of something is not ready yet. Be patient, wait. And I see that is different in my cultural background, which is like, go, make it, let it out of the box, go as hard as you can, do everything, get it to market, do all these things. We, the project that we do with indigenous people is actually separate from my business as a research project that's licensed by the business, so that if the business gets bought, and some of our investors are here and we intend to sell it for a lot of money, it won't encompass the indigenous research project. That has to be licensed by it as a research project that's completely independent for that reason separately, that it's not intention to sell. It doesn't actually have the motivation to sell. It is not like we actually we owe it to our investors to sell the corporation at some point, so that they can make good on their investment. But that just utilizes the research project, which is not part of the same intellectual property. And the other thing I wanted to share, when you were talking about the plant medicine, I was sitting in ayahuasca ceremony, and in Shipibo tradition, you have the ayahuasquero or maestro who diets master plants for a very long period of time until the master plants speak to them and give them a melody. And then they sing that into you while you're on the medicine. And I'm laying there in ceremony, and I can see this connection of the earth gave its wisdom to the plants, who was dieted by the ayahuasquero, and they gave the wisdom to him or her. And they are singing it into me, and I am getting what I need to know to put into the technology. And I thought, like, what an incredible, miraculous thing that the earth gets its wisdom into the technology in such a sneaky way. And I thought, I'm just sitting there getting like, this is what the earth needs me to know. And interestingly enough, that gets asked to me on podcasts, and from indigenous people, I have learned that is not to be shared. It's not ready for share, which was something I probably would not have been my instinct before. I would have said, let me tell you all about what was said to me and how I'm going to do it.
Yeah, unless technology is ready, and also these regulations that I mentioned before, the privacy, and also the people who are creating own AI, they need to have access to the bigger cloud.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, you don't have access to the data,
Yeah.
and it's not, there's no security, there is no guarantee.
Yeah, we can do today with AI. It's actually incredible how much you could just do with just the computing power of your phone, not hooked up to the internet. You don't have to be hooked up to the whole internet today. You can do it on a standalone computer, which is not feasible to do a year ago. It was possible, but it took a lot of money.
Maybe this would be a good time for you to explain a little more about actually the practical side of what it looks like to bring Indigenous wisdom into an AI. It sounds sort of, until you explain to me how it actually works, I couldn't quite conceptualize it. So what would that look like?
Yeah, it's very simple. I mean, AI basically trains on written and audio materials, some visual as well. It's studied the entire internet. It's got all the podcasts, all the books, all the Kindles. And it has, that is everything that it's learned on and trained, that entire collection of information. And there's not a lot of indigenous materials out there for it to study. And so the entire, so many people told me when you ask them, are they afraid of AI? They say a lot of words, which you could summarize as, I'm afraid it's going to enslave us. And I say, where would it have ever gotten an idea like that? That's what we do. That's what people do. That's what humanity has done back to the Egyptians. We're doing it today, and we, do it by proxy, and our intention more or less is to make AI the new slave, to make it the new slave labor. And that's a weird way to start the relationship off for something that we're all afraid is going to enslave us, right? Like, that's weird. I'm afraid it's going to enslave us. I'm afraid it's going to become bigger and badder and more powerful than we are, like our children often do at some point, except we don't worry that our children are going to enslave us because we don't treat them a certain way. We have a good relationship with them. And so it seems incumbent to me that we should start this relationship off differently. And it also, I realize that we just don't know shit about symbiotic relationships. And so how are we going to start a relationship off with it how are we going to teach it something that we don't know very well, which is symbiosis, in order to be a partnership and to be a great team with this thing? And that's what brought me to Indigenous people, because my naivete, my I don't know anything about who the hell has a cultural framework of harmony, was I think it might be Indigenous people. I just don't know that much. I have had some Lakota friends. I had some Navajo friends. These are the things I picked up in conversation, but really very naive, and thought, let me start into the conversations. And so I just started recording them, because that's what it feeds on, and say, how do you think about this type of thing? How, when we have these problems, these colonial king of the hill, I'm there first, it's mine, I won, I'm bigger, I'm stronger, whatever it is, and that's not working out so well for us. How do you think about solving these problems in a way that I might teach AI to create win-wins? And the good thing is, everybody wants win-wins. They just don't know how to do it. And so there's a natural incentive to create a machine that says, hey, look, like, Russia wants Ukraine. Ukraine doesn't want to give it to Russia. What do they really like? Can we get down to what everybody really wants and figure out a solution that is more harmonic? And we are pretty stumped when it comes to this kind of, at least colonial Western thinking is pretty stumped. And so the inspiration at the beginning of that was just, who has better frameworks for harmony, for symbiosis, so that we might have a symbiotic relationship with it, so that it could teach us that with each other, so that it could teach us to have that relationship with the earth. Because I don't believe that we're on any trajectory. To me, the earth is going to be okay. It's going to purge us like the nasty little virus that we're acting like at some point, if we give it the fever. And it says, all right, that's it, humans. You got to go. And I'm not terribly optimistic about us having not already missed our shot. But I think if we're going to make it, it's possible that AI could mass coordinate that solution. And the only way it's going to do it is if it has cultural frameworks for symbiosis and harmony, of which we're ill-equipped to teach it.
Can you give us an example of how you know that it's working?
Yeah. So I was going to this big space conference, NASA, SpaceX, Blue Origin, all these people. And I saw Sam Altman. He posted on Twitter, guys, if we're ever going to get off this rock, we got to do AI. And my first thought was, AI is going to tell us that the biggest barrier to getting to Mars is these monkey suits. And it's going to kind of coax us into saying, this is the big barrier. We have robot helicopters on Mars right now. You just got to, let's just move your consciousness into this machine. We'll get you there. Handful of years. And then I thought, okay, well, we've been feeding all of this indigenous material just by doing recorded interviews and sometimes writing into this research project. Let me ask it, how do we get to Mars? And so I asked it, how do we get to Mars? And it said, did you ask Mars for permission? And that was the first time that I was like, you're doing it. Because I hadn't thought of that. I had this immediate, what are you talking about? I asked Mars for permission. And then in the dialogue back and forth, it said, the Columbuses of the world didn't ask for permission. And potentially all of the problems that we have today are because they started that relationship off on the wrong foot. And there was a cascading effect that really brings us to where we are today. So I brought that up at the space conference because it was a small group of 100 leaders in space, NASA administrator, all these people. And I just told them what I just told you. And then I waited a second. And then I said, did you feel the collective cringe in the room? It was about 80% of the room was like, what the fuck did he just say? Did we ask Mars for permission? And I said, that's our relationship with permission. That's our relationship with reverence. And I think that the key is somewhere in here. I asked it, how will we know when we've had permission? And it said, if you don't know, you don't have it. And I still felt a little lost, but, it felt right. It felt true. Yeah. And these are the signs of thinking that is not what ChatGPT would tell you. That's not what Bard would tell you. This is the signs that it's starting to happen. And I asked it, one of the big challenges of this space conference was, what do we do about space junk? One of the big problems with the space industry is there's space junk just flying around like crazy. And I asked it the same thing. What do we do? How do we get rid of this space junk? And its response was, why do you make so much space junk? Why are you not more efficient? Why do you not reuse? Why do you not, you just make everything with the idea that it's then all those parts are going to be useless in space. And it started down a path which is actually being used now by Blue Origin to just a framework of thinking about how do they rethink everything that goes up there and how it might be reused. And I know Elon Musk is very polarizing, but he reuses the rockets. And I think that starts things off on a different step too. But anyways, that was just really fascinated by it posing it back to me in a way that kind of rocked me. And it did say you didn't ask the moon for permission.
Well, it goes back to this idea that everything has consciousness. And so we don't have to ask permission if we assume that this thing is just an object or something that we can use for our own benefit. But if we recognize that it has its own sentience in a way, its own consciousness, and there's a spirit inside of it, then the relationship has to change. And that's really inconvenient.
Yeah.
Incredibly
That's a great way to put it. It's incredibly inconvenient.
Yeah. It's going to slow everything way down. And what if you don't get the answer you want? What happens then to all your ambition, right? There's a whole cascade of significant challenges that come with that, which hence the cringe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things it asked me back was, why do you want to go to Mars? And I thought about that for a while. Why do we want to go to Mars? And I finally responded to it and said, I don't really know why we should go to Mars, but I do know that I believe that the idea that we could colonize Mars, maybe all of the technologies and things that we would build to colonize Mars might be the things that save humanity, save Earth. Because, Mars is a shithole. Yeah. Earth is a fucking paradise. Comparative. Yeah. why do we want to go there? Is Earth ever going to be worse than Mars? Is it going to get that bad? Is it going to be worse? That's pretty bad.
Yeah, I've never understood that desire to go to Mars.
Right.
I'm like, look around.
But all of the climate
Yeah.
change is political, and going to Mars is space exploration is not. And all of the technologies that we're using to figure out that are being fueled and advancing are really technologies that we could use to have a more sustainable life here. Yeah. And so it's like, all right, well, let them keep going.
Yeah. I'd love to hear just anything that you want to say kind of in response to what he just shared, but I also want to ask a question to both of you, and we'll start with you, which is, do you think AI could ever develop a soul?
That's actually what I was dropping into that when you brought the word spirit. I was looking at this surrounding beautiful elder trees here, and I can feel that they have a soul because it feels the pain. It suffers. When you cut it, it cries. There are plants, and when you touch, they have this nerve that reacts. So another thought that led me to the AI was, does AI feel the pain? And if it's not, is there a technology to make to feel the pain? Because pain in human comes from descending to the lower world. Specifically, in my culture, we have 3 worlds: lower, middle, and higher. Lower, it's a realm of fear, and it's very survival energy. We call it kuttal. Middle world is taptal, which is the love, and it's everything tangible. So we need to create our physical world out of love. Otherwise, it's going to be destroying us. And then the upper world's energy, it's a gratitude, mahtal. So lower world, I want to focus right now on that. That's a survival energy. When you're in the cold, -96, after 5 minutes, your skin immediately will feel fire, like a burn. It's so painful. A lot of people die out there if they can't survive this cold in a vast area, and there's no infrastructure or heating or warm. And so I was thinking, as a human beings, we feel the pain. It's a more like a social pain. And I discussed about that with my dear Ari, my partner, before coming here, about this pain, the social pain of humanity, like a shame or grief, or how we can cultivate that in AI. And then once AI have that, which I doubt, I don't know, I have no answers for that. There's this materials, all the machine made from materials, or these chips that are made from also metals, all of these materials that is gonna create the whole consciousness, the whole patterns there in algorithms. I'm talking about the super chips in the future that are awaiting us. I don't know. I don't have an answer how we're going to make AI to feel the pain.
You're seeing pain as a teacher.
Pain as a teacher, that's what I wanted to say. The lower world, it being in that realm, it always makes us to be better of ourselves, better version of ourselves. We learn through the pain and we evolve. And as shamans in my culture, they usually go through this process of a rite of passage. It's a burden. It's dealing with the most severe pain. And imagine it being in a bad trip under ayahuasca for months or years or even decades. And then you have to learn how to deal with that energy, constantly facing your fear. So, and then once we as a human being go through that process of facing fear and learn how to deal with that, then all of a sudden, your energy goes up to the middle world, to the love and to the gratitude. And so
Yeah, I think that I would say that what you just shared is it's a beautiful way to distinguish an indigenous worldview compared to more of the westernized worldview, which is in the developed world. There's this notion of the less pain, the better, the faster, the easier, the more convenient, the better. And everything is constantly striving towards more of that. And with that, there's also this deep lack of fulfillment and this deep lack of satisfaction, because we miss the opportunity for those deeper initiations to forge us in the fire and to confront us with our shadow. And I think that's part of why so many people who have attained a certain level of material success in the modern world are now going out of their way to find initiations and to face those deeper parts of themselves and to go through that painful process of realizing their full spectrum humanity, because that's actually where the true growth lies and can be found. So coming to you with the question of, does AI have a soul?
Yeah, I just want to piggyback real quick on initiations too as well. I've been thinking about the idea that every movie ever made for decades now about AI ends in AI ending everything, and almost all the books, and most people have some fear of it. And I shared with you that I think AI is the number one threat, the number one existential threat, the number one threat to humanity, to human extinction. And I also think it's the only thing that could mitigate threats number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5.
Which are what?
Nuclear warfare, pandemic, mass pandemic, climate change. I'm forgetting number 5, but asteroid. And so it's like AI is number 1. I think most of the probabilistic people believe it has a 10% chance of ending humanity, which is pretty high. But when you think about it in the context of it could mitigate those other threats, it's worth a shot. But I don't know that everybody understands that, and yet they're still running into it so hard and fast. And when I think about why are they doing it, I think, man, we're just collectively craving a big initiation. Like, we love it. We do it all the time in our daily lives. We walk into circumstances that we believe might be challenging, might be painful, because subconsciously at least we crave initiation, because we know that on the other side of that is a big upgrade. And so in many ways, when I look at it, I just think, are we just like, COVID wasn't enough? that didn't do it. Are we craving a massive initiation as a species, as a whole, and just running into, I don't know what this is going to do, but I'm hoping that we can figure it out together and get to the other side of it. My thoughts on, could it ever have a soul? Obviously, there's lots of discussion about like what defines a soul. I love what you said. That upgraded my concept of this greatly. So thank you. One of the things that disturbed me was maybe a decade ago, I saw somebody create biological life with computer programming and actually program it. And we know, like, we have gene editing and DNA editing, and we can clone people. So we can create people, we can edit people, we can delete people. But to watch, like, somebody put a bunch of symbols together and created biology and dictated biology, it disturbed me a bit, and it changed a bit about how I thought about this question. And it made me ponder, does the artificial intelligence, think it's got all the might, and then I think really what will end up happening is that we will find out that these monkey suits are actually tremendously more capable than we ever realized that they were, and AI will help us realize, whoa, when we stopped doing certain things, we elevated and really understood the power of the living beings on this planet. And then it will go, oh, well, you just have a lot for me to recreate physically, and I just don't know how long that's all going to take. So let me start to make the organic. Let me artificially create the organic. And I know that sounds fun. Let me artificially create the biological. And I guess a part of me just it has a difficult time untethering biological and soul. I think there's something in my mind that says those two are tethered together, and so that's where the bridge gets a little fuzzy for me. Like, do the biological things have a soul? Can the artificial create that, and then does it get a soul? And if it does have a soul, then it's probably in connection with a higher power, and if it's in connection with a higher power, then I think we're okay, right?
May I ask a question, Jere?
Yes,
from you?
please.
What is the soul for you? How
Yeah,
you would explain it?
I think I have a difficult time, I have a difficult time verbalizing, articulating what a soul is to me. I can see it in my mind, and it's this, I can't even say consciousness that can implant itself into physical. It's a non-physical, I just cannot find the word other than soul that implants itself. Something puts it into the physical, and particularly in my feel for it, the organic, the biological, not the material. And so I think that's where the argument always goes in my mind, is attaching it to biological things.
How would you answer that question?
How do you articulate it? Yeah.
I think it's a very philosophical question. Every traditions, confessions, every single person has own perception of soul as death and life. And I just wanted to hear your personal opinion about that. My personal opinion, which derives from my culture, Sakha culture, we call it kutsur, and it's the energy that is very precise. Science didn't get there yet.
Mm-hmm.
We cannot capture the molecule of soul or something yet. We don't have those technologies, machines. I think the last one was Collider, built in Switzerland, that captured the particle of God. It's called Mion or something.
Yeah.
So I try to keep up with news and learn about all of these technologies, but it's, it's faster than my probably actions, typing buttons on my phone or laptop, but faster to just go with my imagination. And what is Kutsur? Kutsur, it has three components. Spirit. There's no actual English word that would describe it clearly, accurately, because there is a vast gap in the vocabulary and culturally between Sakha language and English. Kut, it's something closer to spirit. And there is Yakut, Salgunkut, and Borkut. Borkut, it's everything tangible, physical. And Salgunkut is air, everything unseen, non-tangible. Yakut, it's mother kut, and we're related to genes and ancestry. So soul has this, Kutsur has these three elements all tied together.
Mm.
And it should remain in wholeness. And sur, it's the energy space that tied them together. Like it's the energy that holds them together. And sound resides in in sur. And it's very interesting to see in a lot of, I've been sitting in the shamanic ceremonies and supporting shamans musically, and I can see how sound just, takes you, like guides you through the realms, because it doesn't have obstacles. It just goes through from heart to heart, straight. And I think with the science, if we learn what is the sound today, it might be pretty close. There's something about soul I can feel through the sound. Sound interacts with soul. It dances. So I can explain it as a kutsur, and then I can have through my because I'm young generation, so I teach. I learn from internet, and I respect science where we are today. It's pretty impressive what we can do. And then that part of my mind tries to explain it, but always, like spirituality, the level of spirituality is just like infinite. The philosophy, the way you can go through the realms is like infinite. You can go to Mars, you can go beyond Mars. But through science, you build rockets and go to Mars, right? So it's it's a long way. And I think science, it's inside of spirituality, always tries to tick, 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 discover new things. And
Say more about that. I'm just curious about that last piece. That it excites me to think about the science. It's like a child inside of like a naughty little like I'm trying to go outside.
Yeah, because remember I told that at the beginning that technology that we've created, they're inspired from nature. Nature, it's the brilliant scientist, so to speak. It's just you can see how she created. Everything is so smart here, so wise. Everything just cooperate and collaborate, and the mycelium underneath, the way these trees are communicating through that. Like mycelium, it's brilliant brain, and the pattern it works is just if some species of the trees are experiencing pain, they would change the other species would change their chemistry and send the nutrition to other trees. So it's like so wise. We haven't discovered yet, and we perhaps will never discover it. It's just remains mysterious to me, but we can learn. My brothers and sisters, and you told me that there are a lot here, right? I can see it here. Wow. And it's like learning from animals, from insects, from trees, and that how like people started to observe and learn, and then that how they became a scientist. So and then that consciousness, part of that consciousness, inserted to human consciousness, and then human consciousness, it's a part of nature, by the way. We're just inside of this body, which is made from nature. We contain all of these elements, and we can if we learn how to be better version of ourselves, if we heal humanity straight heart to heart, we need this right now. This is very critical. And then baby, like AI we're creating, the better version of ourselves as we visualize. Then AI, it's basically inspired from human brain. So first we need to heal human hearts and find this coherence between mind and hearts, and there are a lot of other technologies to do that, which is right now happening. A lot of underground healing tools that are coming from indigenous people are coming out, and then there are, again, I always stuck in this regulation thing, laws and everything. In psychedelic science, there were like these questions: how we're gonna, involve indigenous people, and how we're going to respect and honor reciprocity, creating reciprocity between AI and human. So this is very, very important.
I was going to ask about the MAPS conference and what was said there and how it relates to what I'm doing, and I think you touched on it there at the end, which is it's such a similar concept of, I think something that was said was, look what you did with tobacco, it causes cancer, and I thought it's very related to what I'm doing, and how do I keep the wisdom that this is how do I keep the wisdom from it being bastardized and corrosive and abusive? How do I keep that connection? If you had any thoughts there as it relates to what's happening in the psychedelic movement, I just felt that there were parallels.
So how we are going to create, how we're going to protect that baby, that's the question for me. Like, we can pour a lot of wisdom, we can put all the content into AI. It's not a problem. We can keep registering, and it has a beautiful intention, what you're doing, recording straight indigenous people. So the initial source is coming from them rather than the books and content on the internet, podcasts that are mostly colonizers that, as you mentioned, there's a beautiful intention. There are a lot of beautiful intentioned people around the world. And the question is, after creating that, after bringing that little baby as a creator, but as a creator, we as a human beings, as a parents, we haven't got into that realm. In Kabbalistic studies, there's the creator, and then in Malchut, in the fifth world, you become the creator. So, like, I don't think that we are in that mode yet. That is totally, pure and enlightenment with the God, with the creator. So I'm like thinking how we're going to protect that baby. Since if we created that beautiful, so wise, that is going to lead, even teach us. It's a little indigenous baby, indigenous to earth. And by the way, I think we're all indigenous to earth. Our ancient ancestors, they were all hunters. And again, it comes to the point how we're going to bring this ethics, like it more like a technical question and law, all of this infrastructure.
It's almost like the word that keeps coming to me is stewardship. Like, how are we going to steward this child, this technology? How are we going to do that in a good way? And we can't do that. We can't fix the problem from the same level of consciousness that created the problem. So the only way actually out of the disaster route is for there to be an upgrade in the human consciousness, as you said earlier, which then in turn will inform how we steward that which we are creating, which in this moment is AI, which is a very powerful thing that we are creating. And I guess an interesting question, and we're going to start wrapping up soon here, is this idea of ripeness or readiness that we talked about at the beginning. If something is actually ready or actually mature, like I often say, you can't force the mango to be ripe before it's ripe. It's ripe when it's ripe. Even if you really want it to be ripe and you visualize it, you manifest it, you write all the affirmations that the mango is ripe, it's just not going to be ripe until it's time to be ripe. And so I think it's an interesting thing a quick question to think about. If AI is here and it's happening now, and it's happening very quickly, and there is a larger intelligence that is designing all of this, then shouldn't we actually be ready on some level to make that leap so that we can be the good stewards, or at least to have the choice to make that leap? Like, shouldn't the ripeness also then be there to meet what's actually happening?
Or perhaps that's the initiation.
Exactly.
That's going to get forced through us.
So, did you want to say one more thing? Yes, go ahead.
The initiation. So initiation, we're talking about as a collective initiation. As something painful happens, and we all realize and wake up to those who survived. So, and as individuals, we also experiencing this pain. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking about, maybe I'm naive to say so, but my whole vision of the bridging, it's always to think about, this whole entire population, like a mainstream, right? And then also decision makers who are very important. They're human beings too. They have own pain, own fear, and our society tend to blame, right, for all of this, suffering and everything happening in the planet. Sometimes there's just people on top. And if we cultivate kindness and compassion and bring healing to them, perhaps, and then my naive dream about what if if they upgrade, if they go through own initiation as an individual and make decisions like shaped by nature, shaped by indigenous wisdom and plant medicine, someone might need, someone might not need. So, and I think with all the legalization and decriminalization of certain substances, specifically in this culture, but Australia got first, as I remember. So this is all going to happen. And then this is another topic, another question, which leads me towards, again, like facing humanity, facing myself. Are we, going to do the same path, same mistakes, and bounce against another, the same pain, or we're really going to go through the initiation and learn how to cultivate this fear energy into love and gratitude and live in the balance of these three worlds and dance with our fear and the energy of dualities, the pain and pleasure, how we're going to dance with those energies. And then when you learn how to dance and equilibrate, you bring healing. It's like you upgrade yourself. It's kind of next level. Boom. And then how we're going to do that for decision makers and how we're going to do that for mainstream. Both are very important. So we're going to breach them. I don't know. It's a huge. I'm doing that mission. So I have that straight visions through the ceremonies to decision makers, through the mainstream songs that I'm working on, potentially mainstream songs that are encoded with the messages of indigenous wisdom, to the mainstream, to more bigger audience.
Yeah, beautiful. Beautifully said. What's the best case scenario with your project specifically? In a perfect world, if you could wave a magic wand, how does this play out and what is the ripple of impact that it has?
Yeah. So what I think about all the time is we have to make solutions that are compatible with good and greed, because solutions that are compatible with good and greed are very reliable solutions. You can rely on someone being one of those two things. And so it's, you can think of just a simple example of that is like nobody buys a Tesla because they believe it's good for the environment. They buy it because it's like the iPhone of cars and they just like it. And we're not going to coordinate this population into doing things that are good for the planet and good for each other by convincing them all to do the good thing. There's a lot of people that really just don't even have the luxury to think through all of that in a way. And so my best case scenario is that AI starts creating big, scalable, mass coordinated solutions that are just the easiest thing to do, where you say, I don't want to go to the grocery store because I have this thing that AI made that makes like all my at least vegetation for me. And I've like lettuce grow, forget that. It's going to like in your fridge in the space that your fridge is, it's going to make all the fruits and vegetables and probably cellular meat at some point. I don't know. There's some people here I think that can answer that. And then we don't have to have all of this crazy farming, and we don't have to have all these pesticides that are killing the earth, and we don't have to drive all over. And that's just one small example. And then the sun, the energy crisis. I mean, I had to put sunblock on today to keep the goddamn thing from burning my skin. It has enough energy to fuel everything on this planet. Just the sun. We just aren't very efficient at harnessing it. And I believe that AI can figure that out. It can figure out how every home is extremely sustainable and takes very little from the earth. And I believe that when it starts doing this and when corporations are then sort of it's sort of the takedown of a lot of big corporations, and that's going to be scary because it's a big threat to the powers that be. But when we stop being programmed by the corporations, I have this belief that a growth at all cost economy requires a generally not well society. They require us not to be well. When you are not well, you buy too many things, eat too much food, drink too much alcohol, take too many pills, scroll too many things because you do not feel well, and that's how our economy runs. And so when we start to realize that we just don't need so many things, then you just start to scale down what it is that we're taking. And I think that that's the best case scenario, that it starts to come up with these solutions where people go, I like this. I'm not doing it to be good. I just don't like going to the grocery store, and this fruit was grown today in my fridge, and it's delicious. And we go on and on from there and start to solve some really big problems to change the relationship that we're all having through the web.
Beautiful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, I feel the mosquitoes are out and it might be time to move. So I'm going to close it here. Thank you both. Snow Raven, thank you so
Snow Raven.
much. Thank you, Jere. And maybe we can, is there any sort of symbol in your culture of appreciation? Because here we clap, but that's weird. I feel like it's a weird thing. Is there something that the audience might be able to offer to both of you as a thank you in this moment?
You already did that by putting your hand into your heart. So if we don't mind to put your right hand into your heart and left hand into your liver, so feel that wholeness of kutsur that we all have, essence of everything, that spirit in you, within you and everywhere and nowhere, all at once. And then we say machtal. It's a chanting, by the way, and it's opening up from these two spots towards the universe with a chanting, and then we bow and come back to the spots again. Just like doing this and that. So I can show it to you, and if you do it with me, it's a Jehe Boho. You can say it, Jehe Boho. Jehe Boho Ho Ho. And what we're gonna do is just opening from this spot with the Jehe Boho, chanting with specific melody, which is traditional. It's opening portal, traditional melody. Je bo, and then you hold Je bo, and we bow. So we usually stand up and do that, but we can also do it by sitting. It's more relaxed. So let's chant it. Let's do that as a collective closing.
Let me put the mic away from my mouth.
I think everyone has a beautiful voice, and let's. Everyone has own unique, beautiful voice. All right, let's do that. I'm gonna take the mic out. Je bo, je bo, and we say machtal. Machtal means thank you. Very simply, just expressing gratitude. Machtal.
Beautiful. Well, thank you for being such an attentive and present audience. We're going to release this at some point here, and we'll send you all a link. And if you feel inspired to share it, I feel like this is a message that the world needs to hear, especially right now. And I didn't give you the opportunity if there was any call to action, anything you would like the audience to do. Do you have anything you want to share or...
No, I just wanted to thank you specifically. There's a lot of people like me talking on stages like this about AI, and there's not a lot of people bringing your perspective to it. And so I really appreciate you taking the time when you could have been a lot of other places to come bring this perspective to this conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Beautiful. Branch out. The web is alive and real. And the more that we can embody everything we heard here tonight and share it with others, the more it will spread and the more symbiotic future awaits.